All right, let's get going. I've got a lot of material to get through today. So, let's go back to our discussion of the news media and how people get their news. And yeah, this turns out to be a very interesting topic because we are seeing a significant change in the way people get their news these days. And it's important to note that this change, like so many other trends we see today, has a lot to do with the internet. So what I want to do today is I want to cover several aspects of this trend and talk about what this means for news. Now we see the number of people actually getting the news from print media is declining. It's dropping. And the internet is quickly becoming an important source of news for more and more people. Okay? Great. Now, let me move on to give you some statistics on this trend. I want you to pay attention to this. Researchers noticed that in 2000, about 70% of the people they asked said that newspapers were an important source of information for them. So 70% said reading the paper was important. In 2003, that number dropped to 51%. 51%. That's a pretty significant decline. And I'm willing to bet that that number is even lower now. So, now I'm looking at this room full of college students. Most of you are between 18 and 24. And my guess is that most or maybe all of you use the internet. The reason I'm talking about your age group is that you represent the new trend away from newspapers and toward the internet. You are the trend. And experts predict that this trend away from newspapers will continue as more and more young people grow up using the internet to do so many things. Let me spell this out a little more for you. There was a key study of young people done in 2004. And for this study, they interviewed 35 to 54-year-olds who read the newspaper. And they asked them if the newspaper was an important part of their day. Well, 38% of them said yes. But, when they asked 18 to 24-year-old newspaper readers the same question, only 17% of them said yes. Only 17%. This is big news. All right. So to be sure, there is a move away from the traditional way that people have gotten their news. Okay. Let's move on to why this trend is happening. So, why? Now, many young people say that they prefer internet news because it's a fast way to keep up with events. Now, that's probably true. But there are a couple of other significant reasons why news on the internet is gaining popularity. One is simply that news on the internet is more up to date. It's the most current information. That's a significant difference from the news you read in the newspaper that comes out once a day and stays the same for 24 hours. Now, a second feature of internet news is it gives people the ability to get informed about any kind of news, weather, world events, traffic, news that is more in-depth than in a newspaper. So, the bottom line here is internet news is more complete. With an online newspaper, for example, you can begin to read a news story, go to a related audio or video link, and so on. You can keep going and get more information. Now, let's move on to another attraction of the internet. I want you to notice I keep talking about links. That's because on the internet, those links are there and you decide how much you want to learn and you decide what kind of news you want to get. So, the internet is interactive. In other words, there is communication between the person looking for news and the website. Again, you, the internet user, control the news you get. Now, I want to point out that this movement to internet news has obviously made a lot of people excited, but it's also made some experts who study the media, well, it's made them worried. Some of their concerns are the flip side, meaning the opposite of the attractions we talked about earlier. For example, I mentioned that internet news is fresh, it's up to date. Well, the downside, that is, the negative side of this, is that reporters writing the news for the internet must work extremely quickly to research, write, and get the news on the internet as soon as possible. So, in this rush to get the news onto the internet, it's easy for the reporters to make mistakes or maybe leave out some important information. So, media experts are concerned that internet news might sometimes be less accurate and less reliable than newspaper news. So that's one possible downside of internet news. Okay. Now, here's another possible problem. We said before that many internet users really enjoy controlling their news. Maybe that sounded good, right? But the worry for media experts is the possibility that internet users will limit their news too much. They won't know everything they should. Now, this is a crucial idea. And the idea is that people who get their news on the internet may only learn what they want to learn and miss other important information that they should know. All right. Now, I want to bring up another concern, and it's related to the previous one. It has to do with this idea of limiting what news you get on the internet, right? So, right now, let's take a look at this. Okay. It's the front page of a newspaper. It's a typical front page of a newspaper. Here you see all kinds of news, just on the front page. International, national, local news. And you can also find out right away what news is most important. The important news has a bigger headline. Here it is, at or near the top of the page. And maybe it's longer. Look at this headline. You know by where it's at that it's the most important news. It's more important than the other news. But when you get the news online, you tend to see something like a list. A list, you know, line of headlines to choose. You don't always know what's important. So the worry is that internet news readers will have much less information about the important things they need to find out in today's news. So what I'm saying is, some experts fear that online news readers will be less informed citizens who who might not participate as much in their communities. In other words, if people know less about the world around them, then they might not vote, say, or help make other decisions in their communities. They just won't be as interested in the events going on around them. That's the fear. All right, I see our time is almost up. Well, I want to stress that the trend away from newspapers to the internet is happening right in front of us. And as students of the media, you may or may not agree with some of the concerns of the researchers, but it certainly offers us a lot to think about. Okay, I'll see you guys next time.